So I just want to give you a little information about our guest speaker. This is Senator John Barrasso. He is a United States Senator, so the majority of the time he lives in D.C. He comes back to Wyoming on the weekends. He is your senator. So the people in the state of Wyoming have elected him to represent us in the United States Senate. A couple little facts about the senator. I met with the senator on February 24th, virtually. I was supposed to be in D.C., so it kind of stinks I was in my office talking to him. But the district asked, or the state was asking the senator for support for mental health needs of students. Raise your hand and show the senator if you have talked to a counselor this year. Oh, come on, I know more of you than that have talked to the counselor about something. How many of you have been down to see the nurse? Yeah, those are big needs for us, huh? So you might recognize Senator Barrasso. He's been really instrumental recently in D.C. Talking to President Biden about the moratorium on federal lease drilling. You know how critical oil and gas, if your parent works in the oil fields, how important that is to our industry. Trying to keep that going for us. And I believe also, am I correct, Senator, with some coal information, trying to keep our coal mines going and open and keeping our people employed. A couple things you can do in Washington, D.C. is the senator is the person, he has internships in his office. And you all know Mr. Grube. Mr. Grube's brother, Dalton, is becoming a doctor. And he interned in Senator Barrasso's office a few years ago. He got to spend the summer there, spend time with the senator, learning how things work. And the reason he did that is because the senator is also a doctor. There's like 8 doctors in the Senate, is that right? 4. He's one of 4 doctors in the Senate. So he's been really important and had a lot to do with all of the COVID stuff going on. My daughter Kyra interned with Senator Enzi one summer because she wanted to become an accountant. So it's a really fun thing to do. He does the recommendations if you think you want to go to one of the U.S. military academies, like West Point or the Air Force Academy. Senator Barrasso is who you talk to. So, Senator, you want to come on up? Let's give him a round of applause, guys.
Well, thanks. Good. It's looking at you, Pete. Well, thanks so much for having me. We had this wonderful conversation on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and there were 3 principals on the phone to talk about this, and they were principals that were supposed to come to Washington. And each of them said, you really ought to come to my school. Because they couldn't come to D.C., you couldn't come to D.C. I said, I'll be there. And we're out of Washington this week because it's Easter coming up. I said, okay, I'm coming to Rock Springs. I have an office in Rock Springs right across the bank from the bank building, right across from Cowboy Donuts. You know what Cowboy Donuts is. So I have an office there. If you want to be an intern actually in that office, we can do that. Or hopefully one of you, like Dalton, will want to come to Washington and spend the summer or a semester learning about government, learning about Washington. And he was actually helping me with some of the committee work. So I wanted to come because I had the nice invitation, wanted to have a chance to visit with you, answer your questions. Maybe we can take questions. I don't know if any of you have questions written. It looks like you have one written down, or note card or something. So I'm happy to answer questions. I'll just start by, let me ask you a couple questions. Any of you been to Mount Rushmore, seen pictures of Mount Rushmore? So, a lot. You know who's up there? How many? There are 4 of them up there. Do you know who they are? Abraham Lincoln, yep. George Washington. Thomas Jefferson. Teddy Roosevelt, yes. You know which one loved to come around Wyoming? One of them loved it here. Teddy Roosevelt loved Wyoming. The others were all kind of gone and dead before we even were a state, even before we were a territory. They weren't really out this far west at the time. But Roosevelt loved it here. His cowboy cavalry came from Wyoming, his Rough Riders came from Wyoming, and he would come to Wyoming to give speeches. One of the things I found really interesting when I got to the Senate, because there was another president that liked to come to Wyoming. And I'll do this in a very bipartisan way, because Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican. There was a Democrat senator that came to Wyoming and liked it here a lot. There was a Rock Springs connection to that. And you know who that might have been? That was John Kennedy. So when I met Carolyn Kennedy, his daughter, and Teddy Kennedy, who was a senator when I became a senator, Ted Kennedy said, "Oh, I love Wyoming, I love Rock Springs." Teddy Kennedy, why do you love Rock Springs? And he said when he was campaigning for his brother John, who was running for president, he came to Rock Springs and he actually, you can't do this, he got into a rodeo. He rode a bucking bronco in a rodeo in Rock Springs. He said, because they wouldn't let him talk. So he said, what if I get on the bucking bronco? Well, then let me talk at the convention. He said, yeah, and he did. So Rock Springs has this history in politics in Wyoming that really worked effectively. And Ted Kennedy claimed that John Kennedy thought that Wyoming helped him become president of the United States, because when they do the calling of the names at a national convention to nominate somebody, they do it in alphabetical order. Well, guess who's last in alphabetical order? Well, and John Kennedy won when all 15 votes from Wyoming went for John Kennedy in 1960. So they love Wyoming specifically, have this great love of Rock Springs. But the thing about Teddy Roosevelt, when he comes to, he's actually given the commencement speech at the University of Wyoming. And he said, people of Wyoming, I believe in you and in your future. And he was right to believe in us and in our future. I think if he came here and saw this school and talked to the teachers and knew the principal and saw some of the students that have graduated through this school, he'd say, wow, it's quite a place. And great future. Any of you ever heard of the Hathaway Scholarship? Hopefully some of you will take advantage of it. We're the only state in the country that has a scholarship program where every one of you can go to college and have it paid for without having to compete with somebody else. You know, a lot of scholarships, one person has to compete against somebody else to get that scholarship. In Wyoming, you only have to do two things to be able to go to college, and that's to stay out of trouble and keep up your grades. And the whole idea of the Hathaway Scholarship came from four of us in the state senate. I was in the state senate when I was a doctor practicing in Casper. And at Western College, I don't know if you've been to Western College, there was a president of Western College named Tex Boggs. And Tex said we need to do more to make sure that young people could go to college and afford college, because he saw a lot of people that wanted to go to college 2 years or 4 years and couldn't afford it. And we came up with this program, which is now the Hathaway Scholarship. It was just four of us, and Tex and I worked together on that. So we have the opportunities in Wyoming that very few people have in other states. You know, and I'm so proud of the teachers and the administrators and the school nurses and the custodians and all the people. I want to talk to senators from other states. You got a lot of people that are still not even back to school yet. You know, in Wyoming, we've been back to school since August. And Ms. Kundal had people raise their hand if they've been to the school nurse or been to a counselor. You know. Fortunately, we have had people gather together to be able to provide care, to seek counseling, and do it together, and we have camaraderie and friendship that a lot of places they didn't have at all. So I just wanted to come based on her invitation to answer your questions, talk about whatever's on your mind, things that you might want to do, things that you might have concerns about for the future, things that are going on in Washington, D.C. now, if you watch any of it on the news. And it's a very interesting and challenging time in politics and in our country as we deal with lots of different issues, the biggest of which in terms of impacting everybody right now is coronavirus. And we now have a vaccine available. I mean, it's amazing. It took less than a year to have it developed. It's now being, you know, you can get the shot today here in Rock Springs. There's a clinic at the event center where people can go and get the shot to be vaccinated. And when I was a kid, there was a thing called polio. They had a polio vaccine. It took them years to come up with that. And lots of people were impacted by polio before the vaccine was ever invented. So I guess if some of you have questions, I'm happy to answer your questions. If you want to start,
Okay, you can take down your mask to ask your question. How long have you lived in Wyoming?
So I've been in Wyoming probably longer than most people in this state, in this room, have been alive. I started practicing orthopedic surgery in 1983 in Casper, and practiced medicine for about 25 years before I became a U.S. Senator. At the time that I was practicing, I was also in the state Senate and been in the state Senate
for 5 years.
Hold your mask down, Ashley.
Where was I born? I was born in Pennsylvania, and I got here as quickly as I could. My wife was born in Thermopolis. She was a Bobcat in Thermopolis High School, and then she went to the University of Wyoming. And we have 3 kids. They've all done different kind of things in their life. And just want every student have an opportunity to learn what they can learn and do whatever they want. And that's kind of the beauty of Wyoming and our country. For everybody has equal opportunity, you hope, to get an education and to be the best they can possibly be.
Senator, I think Tamara has a question. What's it like to be in the Senate?
Or I guess, what's it like to be in the Senate? There's a lot going on, and you almost have to decide what you want to focus on. Because there's so many things happening around the world and in the country that you have to see where are you going to spend all your time. So we have committees, and I'm the #1 Republican on the Energy Committee, which is really key to Wyoming. I'm trying to be on committees that impact Wyoming. So, we talk about oil, gas, coal, even uranium for nuclear power. All of those things are really important for Wyoming economy, for our jobs. I serve with Cynthia Lummis. She's on different committees. We're not on the same committees because we're going to cover all of the different issues that impact us in Wyoming. She's on environmental work, so there's a lot to do with water. Well, water is a really big issue in Wyoming. She's a rancher, so with an agriculture background. I'm now on the committee that deals with tax fraud and taxes and the implications for who gets charged taxes, how they get used, how they get spent, how the money gets used. So that's part of it. The other part is that you try to get home to Wyoming and travel around. So I get home every weekend and travel the state, try to visit different communities, and you have offices around the state, like the one I have here in the building near Hathaway Scholarship. So it's a really interesting experience. The other thing that I really like about it is you have an opportunity if you're a senator, and Dalton knows this. I told Dalton the most important thing that somebody says in Washington is, the president wants. And then people are like, oh my God, the president wants. I said, I better help with that. So I told Dalton when he was working with me, I said, kind of right below that, somebody said, the senator wants. So if you become an intern in my office, or if you want interested in something that you want to study, the senator wants a paper on budget implications of oil and gas depletion allowances. Some of the people through the Library of Congress and Office of Management Budget will get you information, so you have an access to information that most people don't. I was talking to someone who said, "Oh wow, they read a lot of books." And I said, "Oh, what books do you read?" Like, I don't know if anybody plays golf in here. You ever play golf? So this was talking.
Sam's raising his hand.
So I was talking to a golf coach at Laramie High School, and I said, "Well, so what do you do?" And she said, "Oh, well, these great golf books by this guy named Bob Rotel." I said, "Oh, I know Bob." And I told him, I said, "I have his phone number. I talked to him." How do you know him? Well, I read one of his books. And so if you read somebody's book and you're interested as a senator, you call that person and they'll talk to you. When I talk about energy to people, and I said, well, I want to see what Bill Gates has to think. So I talked to Bill Gates, the Microsoft guy. He's doing a lot of really interesting things in nuclear power, with nuclear energy, because he's focused on reducing carbon. Nuclear energy has no carbon. Coming up with innovative ways to do modular nuclear reactors. And I think Wyoming is the perfect place for that sort of thing. So we work together and trying to find ways to, benefit Wyoming and benefit what you know, and try to help people in Wyoming benefit from the sort of things that you do on a daily basis. So it's pretty interesting, and then you get to know a lot of people that most of us only would get to know through watching television. I've served with 4 different presidents, know the Secretary of State, and through the years, all of them, so that you see what they're doing. You get to travel and to go to 3 hot spots. Every Thanksgiving I go visit the Wyoming National Guard when they're overseas. So this past year I was at IUD Air Force Base in the Persian Gulf. It was the first civilian to go on the base in 4 months because of coronavirus. The year before I went with President Trump to Afghanistan, went on Air Force One because the Wyoming National Guard was a Bagram Air Force Base. John McCain, who had run for president, had been passed on now. But I went with him to Vietnam. He had been held prisoner in Vietnam for 5.5 years. He went to the prison area and showed him the cell.
So you get to do some things that are pretty interesting. The number one focus is the people.
So just out of curiosity, raise your hand if your mom or dad or grandparents work at one of the coal mines or work in the oil field, some kind of position like that.
So you know what we're looking at. You know what the concerns are. When you have a new administration, we went from the Trump administration, I supported President Trump, voted for President Trump, tried to get him reelected. You know, we went from energy dependence to energy dominance because we used all the energy, the oil, the gas, the coal, the uranium, the nuclear power, all of it. And now we have an administration where they have a very different view. And the new Secretary of Interior, she says that she thinks that oil and gas and coal ought to stay in the ground, and we shouldn't use carbon-based fuels. Well, number one, that would hurt lots of people when they're talking about over 1 million jobs across the country. 30,000 jobs in Wyoming that would be impacted if we were to follow that path. And that's what she wants to do, and she's Secretary of Interior. So that would be bad for Wyoming. So that's what kind of things that you're fighting against. And President Biden has said the same thing. He doesn't like fracking, doesn't like oil and gas. He has an approach of trying to use renewable energy only. And the reality is, you need it all. We have world-class wind here, so you want the wind power, you want solar power, you don't need nuclear power. But unless you have oil and gas and coal, basic fuels, you know, there's going to be times, of course, when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. And you need all the energy, because if you take a look at world, U.S. use of energy keeps going up. But we need more and more energy to power the world.
I think I have a question right here.
Yes?
Pull your mask down, Lynn. Or both.
I was both, actually. No, I think, well, it's a good question, because the beauty of Wyoming in the state Senate is that it's a citizens' legislature. So we have teachers who go to the legislature, and doctors, and nurses. And as I was saying with the Hathaway Scholarship, Tex Boggs, who was in the state Senate, he was at the same time president of Western College. So you can do both. Ranchers, farmers, people from all different backgrounds serve in the Wyoming legislature. So it's a citizens' legislature, because that's what I think we want. You don't want professional politicians, you want people who then go home and live under the same laws that they pass. Then we had an opportunity when an opening occurred in the Senate to run for that position. Lots of people did, and I was able to win. But there'll be, the Senate term is 6 years, the House term is 2 years, the governor term is 4 years. So every 2 years we have an election. I was talking to the governor the other day, and planning to run again for election. He says, well, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people running against me, because when you run for office, it's basically you're applying for a job. And when you're running for office and you have the job, you say, please let me continue the job. But you have other people that say, no, fire him. Get rid of that guy. I'm going to hire me instead. And then you go make your case to the voters. Why do you think they should hire you? I make a case of why I think they should hire me. And then that's how elections turn out. In Wyoming, you also don't have it's never just 2 people that get in some of these primaries. Last time I had 5 people that were running against me. Okay.
Was this a goal you wanted, like when you were younger? If you wanted to be a medical house?
Well, when I was younger, I liked medicine. As a kid, I read books on medicine. So I liked the idea of being a doctor. I didn't know what kind I would be. And I was fortunate because when I went into medical school, I knew I was going to be in the same situation. You hope that you like whatever you're doing at the time that you're doing it. And so when I was on the part of the studies in medical school, assassinated. Lyndon Johnson was his vice president. So Lyndon Johnson signs into law Medicare, and they put the age at 65. And he gave a speech, and he said that Medicare, the age is 65, and he said it's for the widows, because he said all the men were going to be dead by then. Now everybody here knows somebody over 65. So you think about what advances there have been in medicine in our lifetimes. And he said it was for the widows, so in their last 3 years of life, he said they wouldn't have to live in abject poverty with high medical bills. So that's, and Lyndon Johnson, the president, actually died at age 64 of heart disease. So we got the medicine part right, because people are living longer. Everybody here has somebody over 65. But we got the math wrong when they set the age of Medicare at 65, because now we have many, many more people who are on Medicare age, which is one of the driving issues of the debt that we have.